Well, good morning, all. Wrapping up week 4. Quick Zoom here just to cover what's going to happen next week and some of the deadlines that are coming up. Gets a little crazy with Easter weekend in the middle of it all, but we'll cover all that. Just wrapping up the week on groups and teams and that form of collaboration. Of course, your journal entries due tomorrow, and your replies for this week's discussion due as well. So make sure you get those in on time. I just want to draw your attention to a couple things. I think I talked about this last week. This article, The Hard Truth About Innovative Cultures, in the January-February edition from this year of the Harvard Business Review, by Pisano, who's a professor at Harvard, talking about the difficult side of dealing with cultures. It's his captions are, "It can be messy and it needs discipline and management," and those are the hard things that people tend to ignore when dealing with groups and teams. So if you get a chance, that's a good read. It's not. There's no indication that this is based on any research, but so it's probably his anecdotal work, but certainly it should spur some thought as we think about how these things work. And then in the most recent edition, which is the March-April edition for this year of Harvard Business Review, in their Idea Watch area, which really are just blurbs about other people's research, there's one under the team's caption called "Intermittent Collaboration Helps Performance," and it really talks about how people work better or more creative individually with intermediate collaboration instead of collaboration being the total focus. It is based on research. It's work that was published as "How Intermittent Breaks in Interaction Improve Collective Intelligence" by Bernstein, Shore, and Lazur. And it's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences from 2018. So it's relatively recent work. This caption, it's a short thing to read, this caption. Really, it's a summary of the editor's view of this research. I would encourage you to find that research and look at it in depth and read it critically, see how it applies. Excuse me, what sense it makes. I think this other one, The Hard Truth About Cultures, is part of a preview for a book that Pisano's got coming out. Creative Construction, the DNA of Sustained Innovation. I'm not sure when that's supposed to be published, but if you find that interesting, you might keep an eye out for that work as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this bit about teamwork and collaboration as groups. It has some strong benefits, but also has some very strong weaknesses. There's a lot of research out there that really indicates that when you get larger numbers, it's really not very useful. And you've read about all the issues, social loafing and those kind of things. And then in one of our posts that we read in our discussion, there's some work that really says once you get past 2 people, you've got issues. Once you get past 2, somebody can loaf or somebody cannot participate. And so you're really not accomplishing a whole lot. And I think in one of my replies, I mentioned some years ago, and unfortunately, I can't remember whose research it was, but they indicated you should be doing collaboration in 2s and 3s. And that's where it's most powerful because you eliminate almost all the weaknesses from teamwork or group work and get the best results. So keep those things in mind. It's not all good stuff. There are issues to have effective teams or groups working. You need strong leadership. And that can be from outside the group. It can be organic in the group. It just depends on the folks and how they're developed and a lot of the context they're in and how, what kind of parameters the group's set up with. So keep that all in mind. It's kind of a mixed bag and depends really on what your context is and what you're trying to accomplish. Honestly, the days of getting a big group together and brainstorming have passed for most people because they realize that you're getting input from a small number of people and the rest are just taking up space in the room. Brainstorming can be an effective thing, but again, it's probably better if you do it in groups, smaller groups, and bring it together as a whole. But anyway, this area continues to be researched, so continue to look and see what's going on. This week, we're going to move ahead and take a look at organizational structure. It's an area I enjoy, and just because I deal with organizational problems all the time, and structure tends to be part of the problem, if not a major contributor to problems in organizations. But you'll find as you're going through our textbook and the PowerPoints that go along with it that a lot of the references are old, in fact, very old. And they tend to talk about norming things. They talk about balanced score sheet, which is a norming thing. Balanced score sheet came out in the 90s, I think it was. And it's really just a benchmarking, and benchmarking tends to drive things to a norm, which means they tend to drive to average or mediocre at best. And you'll find that organizations that excel, they may be aware of benchmarks, but they're always trying to exceed the benchmarks and understand what they're supposed to be about. And so keep that in mind. I did my dissertation on at least in part on norming factors. They aren't always beneficial. So keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that you're looking at some very old information on PowerPoints and in the chapter that deals with it in the book. So look beyond that. See what's going on currently. There's lots of research happening all the time on organizations and organizational structure and organizational behavior. So have a look and see what's going on currently, and contrast that to some of the things that the authors of the textbook talk about, and contrast it and compare it to what you experience as well. And then we're going to move on to culture, which is, I think, a critical area in leadership. We finally realized in the Western world that our ways aren't universal. That really culture and understanding the culture of the followers is extremely important. So you're going to dive into that, and one of the references that you'll come across in the reading is Edgar Schein. I encourage you all to get this. Is a really good book. I mean, it's from the 2012-14, that era. Let's see. Mine's 2004. I think he may have updated it. There may be an earlier version, but at any rate, even the 2004 book, you'll see it's not a small book. He covers a lot, and he's thought to be one of the seminal leaders in the discussion of culture with organizations and leadership. So you'll come across that. You come across some other thought leaders, but again, this is an area that's constantly researched, and as we find more, it just leads to more. Find out more, it leads to more research. So find out what's going on. Again, another. I think I've talked about this in the past. Another really good resource is Hofstede and Hofstede. Their work on culture. It's cited a lot. I use it a lot. It's very good, very informative. I think you'll find that a helpful resource. Honestly, I think it's something everybody should have on their bookshelf if they're serious about leadership. So if you get a chance, have a look at, see if you can get a hold of Hofstede and Hofstede, and if people doing research related to the work they did as well. So keep that all in mind. As we move on through the class now, we get to this next week's leads into Holy Weekend, the Easter weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you are not to be in the class. You're not to be working on anything. That's an expectation of the school. Take time off for Easter. So it'll be a little different in how the class works this week. You'll have your post due on Thursday for your discussion as normal. And it says in the coursework in Canvas that your replies are due by Sunday. Well, you're not going to be able to do replies because you shouldn't be in the class Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So don't worry about the replies this week. Just get a good post in, and we'll forego the replies and let you guys enjoy your Easter. Your journal will not be due for week 5 will not be due next Sunday. It'll be due the Sunday following on the 28th. Our last Zoom will be the day before. So we won't have a Zoom next Saturday. It'll be the Saturday following, which is the 27th, so that we allow for that Easter break. So the journal related to the work you're doing, the reading you'll be doing and accomplishing this week, you'll have an extra week to prepare that journal and get it posted on time. And then again, we'll have a Zoom, not next Saturday, but the following Saturday. That'll allow for this break for Easter. And then, of course, your frames paper is due on May 5th. So you'll have an additional, week after that. Not quite a week because it's due on Saturday, but it'll be due a week from, I believe it's a week from when we have our last Zoom. Let me just double check that. Yes. So we'll have it's due on a Sunday, so it is a full week. Our last Zoom is May 27th, which is a Saturday. Your journals due your week 5 journals due the 28th. A week from that day, your frames paper is due May 5th. Okay. You should be working on your frames paper. I hope you've at least got a good start going. Read the instructions very carefully. It's important you follow them to make sure you meet the requirements for the paper. There's a page range. You have to meet the minimum number of pages. You should not exceed the maximum. Part of doctoral writing is learning to write within constraints. So at least the minimum page count, no more than the upper page count. Keep in mind that if you're using quotations, they do not count in your page count. And the page count is actually the text part of your paper, so it doesn't count the title page. It's from your title on page 2 through your conclusion, and it wouldn't include your reference page either. So it's really just the text. And if you have quoted material, that doesn't count because it's not your work. You're just copying somebody else's work. And at this level, unless you're quoting the seminal thinker in an area, you shouldn't be doing direct quotes. You should be putting it in your own words, showing that you understand it, you can apply it, and then citing it properly. So I expect to see few quotes, but if you have a lot of quotes, remember, they don't count. You could have a page of quotes. That page does not count in your page count. So easiest way is don't use quotes. And honestly, there's not much in this class that should be quoted. Now, if you found something, obviously, if you're talking about Kotter's eight steps, you can quote that because it's well known. Kotter is the seminal thought leader in that process. It's his process. So you could quote that, but again, that's a lot to quote. If you can paraphrase it, that's even better. If you're talking about servant leadership and referencing Greenleaf, he's the seminal thought leader. He really started the major push in the area of leadership. It's okay to quote him. He's the seminal thought leader, and you may find something you see that he wrote, and it just can't be said any better. That's really what quotes are for. There's no way I can change this to make it better or more understandable. He's the guy. Quote him and cite him properly. But that should be a minimum. You should be able to write your frames paper without quotations. It should all be just properly cited work that you've put into your own words. Again, be sure and read the instructions carefully. Be sure you spend time while you're writing looking up the proper use and format of citations and your references. There's still several reference formats that aren't done correctly in our posts. So you want to make sure you clean those up, as soon as possible, frankly. You clean them up before you get to your discussion post this week in the journal that's left, and definitely for your frames paper. It's a skill you really need to have under your belt as you go into writing parts of your dissertation, because you're going to be using these skills. You might as well learn them now instead of when you're trying to get a dissertation completed. I don't know that there's a lot more to go over. Certainly, if you have questions, let me know. Send me an email, and I can get back to you. Um, Again, take time off next weekend for the Easter weekend. Don't be in the class. Don't be in the shell. Don't be posting anything. Just let the class sit for at least those 3 days. Get your post in Thursday, your discussion post in Thursday, and we'll call that good for the discussion for this week. Don't worry about the replies. And then jump back in after Easter. Get that journal for week 5 done, and be working on your frames paper. And as we come up to the last Zoom meeting, if you've got any questions about your frames paper, that's a good time for us to go over them. Really, if you have any questions about it, just let me know. The frames paper is a cumulative paper, so you want it to be your best work. So if you have any questions, let me know. Get the formatting down. Make sure you're carrying forward feedback from prior assignments of things that need to be adjusted related to your formatting, related to your citations. Remember, if you write a direct statement that's stated as a fact, there ought to be a citation. Otherwise, it's an uninformed opinion, and it's not what we're looking for at this level. We're looking for your informed understanding, and that should be based on the work of other people, because you've not done research yet, so you have to depend on other people's work. Make sure you're using scholarly resources. I still see a number of references to web pages and to magazines like Forbes or Inc. Those are not scholarly sources. Relying on those really calls into question the validity of what you're writing about. And that's something you don't want to have happen at the scholarly level. The validity of what you're writing is very important and extremely important for your dissertation. Otherwise, there's no point to your dissertation if there's not validity to it. So be very cautious about the sources you're citing. If you're going to use non-scholarly sources, make sure you're recognizing that in your writing so that whoever's reading it is aware that you understand that. You're just bringing in a point, but then you really need to tie that point to something scholarly to give it validity. Otherwise, it's just somebody's opinion. And if you're just Googling, looking for web pages about the topics we're covering, you're just getting people's uninformed opinions, basically. And a lot of it comes from consultants, and it's based on whatever they've come up with to make things easy for their client or catchy. Everybody's looking for the easy fix, and that's what a lot of consultants do. They cobble together their program and go out and sell it as, well, this is your easy fix for your leadership problems. And by now you should know, after 2 or 3 classes, however many you've had now of studying leadership, you should understand there are no easy fixes. There's not 5 easy steps to this stuff. It's a very complex issue, or a very complex field of study. A lot of depth to it. It seems like almost every day there's a new branch of leadership we're studying. So there's nothing easy about it. It's hard work, again, which I'm sure you realized. It's hard work. There's an awful lot to try and wrap your arms around. And when you go into a situation, whether it's an internal situation for you or external as a consultant, there's a lot to consider, a lot that you need to take into account. And then you really want it grounded on things that have been researched. You don't want it based on, what a couple of people's experience has been, because your context may not be the same. There may not be the generalization there that you think. It may not be applicable in all situations. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. Again, as we get to the part of the class where we're wrapping up and getting that frames paper completed, if you have any questions, let me know. Again, we'll have one more Zoom meeting. Be sure you're watching these Zoom tapes and or recordings, and it's a good idea to go back and review them as well, because I try to talk about some APA things for you every week and just kind of give you a synopsis of what's going on, give you some direction on some new research that you might want to look about. Hopefully through this class, you're developing a skill or furthering your skill of finding research that relates to what you're writing about. Keep that up. That's very important as you're on this doctorate trail, and beyond. You've got to, it doesn't end when you get that diploma, when you get the conference of being a doctor. It's really just the beginning. You need to be able to continue to look for what's going on, what's happening, what's new in the field. And as you maybe focus into a certain area of leadership, you definitely want to be able to keep up with what's going on. There's not a continuing education requirement as there would be for some licensed fields, but there certainly is a requirement that you stay relevant for the field. So you're building skills that should last you beyond the conference of your doctorate. And hopefully you have a desire to do that as well. If this is a field that you're passionate about, there should be that desire, I would think, to keep up and to know what's changing, what's new. And hopefully even after you do your doctorate, you can get involved in some research, whether you're doing it individually or with others. Really, that's what the doctorate shows, that you have the ability to do research. So it's a skill that not everybody has, and not everybody can prove that they can do well. You will have gotten there when you have earned your doctorate. So I encourage you to keep it up. Keep up with the field. Be someone who contributes to the field. There's a lot we still have to learn. So we need a lot of people contributing. The more people contributing, the sooner we find things out. So I just want to encourage you in all that. I encourage you in the work for the class as we finish up again. If you have any questions, whether it's with your final journal or your frames paper, let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as I can and get you the information you need. Again, make sure you're following the directions closely for the frames paper. If you're not, you're in danger of not meeting the requirements for the assignment. You don't want to be in that place as you're wrapping up the class. So follow them carefully. Make sure you're getting all the APA stuff right. You're referencing properly, you're citing properly, and you're using some good resources. And I expect that you'll all do very well in your frames paper and submit a paper that you're really proud of, and that I'm going to enjoy reading. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are. As we wrap up the class, this is an interesting field that gets studied in this class. And as you see, it's not just a simple field. We're off in various directions. This week, looking at the organizational structure and culture, and last week the groups and teams and teamwork and all of that. So innovation's not a simple thing, just like the whole field of education or of leadership. Hopefully you're getting some nuggets to apply where you're at, learning, becoming better leaders in your context. But I think we'll leave it at that for this week. Again, have a good week. Enjoy your Easter weekend. Make sure you take that time off. Don't be doing anything for class. Enjoy the weekend. Take the time off. Whatever your tradition is, have a good time, and then jump back in the following week. And we'll see you not next Saturday, but the following Saturday.